Rumors about the Rockets trading the third pick has hit the timeline. Kevin O'Connor in a video talks about the Rockets having chats with the Brooklyn Nets, with the Memphis Grizzlies. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Should we trade the pick? Is Mikal Bridges a good player? I'm going to talk about that and more. Tap in right now. Enjoy. The Rockets Chop Shop is your one-stop shop for all your basketball needs, for highlights, analysis, podcasts. We do it all here at the Rockets Chop Shop. Make sure you hit the like button on the videos that you watch if you enjoy them. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications from all the great drops that we have on the channel. Also, you can visit the Chop Shop merch store and get you some of the swaggiest gear in the Houston Rockets kingdom. And if you want, you can always support the channel directly through donations. And if you want, you can support us through our partnerships with our sponsors. The Rockets Chop Shop is made by fans, for fans, and we're going to keep rocking and keep dropping that heat. This is something I know. There's been a lot of discussion about Mikal Bridges from Rockets fans on Twitter today, on social media, obviously with the Kevin O'Connor video detailing that the Rockets are open to trading the pick.
Episode. The Rockets at number 3. I have them taking Donovan Clingan, a two-time champion from UConn, 7'2" center, 280 pounds. He has a Gobert-esque body with a 7'7" wingspan. Classic rim protector. He's really good on defense. Offensively, he sets hard screens, a great finisher at the basket. He's flashed an improved three-point jumper throughout the pre-draft process. That's important because if the Rockets take him at number 3, you'll be pairing him in the front court with Alperen Şengün and also another guy with an iffy three-point shooter. One of those two guys is going to have to improve from 3 for this to work. But that's why the Rockets, according to my sources, are listening to trade offers for that number 3 pick. They're talking to the Nets. They're talking to the Grizzlies. They could end up moving down to number 9 if it's Memphis, or out if it's Brooklyn, and then get back Mikal Bridges. So we'll see what the Rockets end up doing. But if they keep the number 3 pick, I have them taking Donovan Clingan.
The Rockets have been saying they would trade the pick pretty much since they got the pick, right? Because as we've discussed on this channel, the Rockets are trying to secure a playoff spot. The draft is weak. They have had an infatuation with Mikal Bridges and the Brooklyn Nets since the rumors came out earlier during the middle of the year that they were going to possibly trade Jalen Green and the picks to get him here. We are in a different position now. The draft, having this third pick that we got via our best friends, the Brooklyn Nets, and able to sit here, to me, in a position of leverage from Brooklyn. Obviously, this is a team that has been playing stubborn the whole time since the James Harden trade. All of us, most of the Rockets fans, have talked about, using those picks to kind of get some things off of them. And the Brooklyn Nets, their front office, has been steadfast about not wanting to move those picks. And their owner, Joe Tsai, in a TED Talk, whatever he was doing, was saying that he is now open to starting a rebuild, which signals to me for the Rockets that, hey, let's talk turkey, right? We're going to do business. Now, the key player, obviously, in this, as mentioned before, is Mikal Bridges, a name that has been tied to the Rockets since that rumor report came out from Shams. To me, it's been validated. A lot of y'all gave people a lot of slack for that. Coming to find out, it's true. And it's this ongoing bromance between Ime Udoka and Mikal Bridges lingers on into the as we get closer to the draft. Now, where I'm having issues with is how people are characterizing Mikal, right? I've heard people, talk about this man like he's just a terrible player. And the Nets people talk about him like he's Mikal Jordan instead of Mikal Bridges. I put a little tweet on Twitter kind of poking fun at them for some of the trade talks that they've proposed. And we need to get to a happy medium. So that's what I'm going to help you guys do. Obviously, we're going to look at some data on Mikal and break him down as a player. What kind of player is he? Is he worth us trading for him? Is he a player that fits with the Rockets? So that's what we're going to do in this video. Enjoy. So my first impressions of Mikal Bridges are exactly what I always thought he is, right? I've always been high on Mikal. I love him as a player. I think for the 3-and-D wing archetype, he is the best player at his position in the league, at his position. And the reason why is because he's able to do so much more than just play the 3-and-D role. And, he was kind of typecast to be a 3-and-D wing in Phoenix. And I think what happened over time as he went over to Brooklyn, they gave him the opportunity and the reps to play like a number one. And what it did was expose some of the weaknesses in his game. Mikal Bridges is not James Harden, right? He is not prime James Harden. He's not prime LeBron. He's not prime Steph. He is not John Morant. He is not Trae Young. He's not even Jason Tatum, right? Because those players are play initiators. Mikal Bridges' perfect role is a supplemental scorer and a primary defender on the other team's best wing that you have out there. And if you look at him from that angle, you can understand why a lot of contenders in the league would give a lot of first-round picks for him, right? We'll talk about what I think his value is. But first things first, let me paint this picture for you guys using some of the data from Mikal. So we're going to look at some of Mikal's stats from his time in Phoenix, right? This particularly is the 2022 season he had in Phoenix when he was playing his role on the side of Devin Booker and Chris Paul. This really shows the type of player that he was used for. And I'm going to bring attention to the pick and roll ball handler possessions because most of the players in the NBA that are going to be your primary ball handlers are going to run hella pick and rolls. This is what you do in the NBA today. Like you run pick and rolls, you try to get the defense scrambling, you try to force that big man to be in a tough position. So the guy that's running the most pick and rolls on a team is essentially your primary initiator. Some people call that a point guard. Some people, you could do it out of the two guard. There are a lot of ways, but if a guy is running all the pick and rolls, they're going to be your primary ball handler. And so I want you guys to focus on Mikal's pick and roll frequency from Phoenix. 52 possessions. That is negligent. 52 possessions, a decent 0.984 points per possession, which, nothing to write home about, but it's pretty good. I think he was rated good on Synergy for that. And these stats are from Synergy, by the way. High pick and roll, which is to me the marker. When you think of the high pick and roll, that is usually the spread pick and roll, right? You're going to have the ball handler, top of the key, big man steps up for that screen. He gets into the action from that top of the key in the high pick and roll. You have all the reads. You have to the corner. You have the short corner, the weak side corner. You have your lob or pop. If your big man's going to pop out, is he going to roll? Then you have the option to score off of that. High pick and roll gives you the entire quarterback vision. If you guys remember the old Madden, when you're playing quarterback, if you had a really good quarterback, you could see the entire court. The idea of putting the ball in the hands of a player to run high pick and roll is that you're assuming in that analogy for the Madden quarterback, they're Peyton Manning or Tom Brady in that year, right? They can see the whole field, right? They're not some David Carr that could only see one wide receiver on the left and has to turn all the way around. And if you guys played Madden back in the day, you would understand the reference to that. But high pick and roll is telling of what a player's role is in offensive system. So for that, only 18 possessions, right? And in those possessions, 46%, that's, data-wise, that's really insignificant. Most of his pick and rolls in Phoenix that he ran came from the corners, right? Right or the left, either the corners or the slot. And this is typical for a secondary creator, a guy that when you kick him out, the shot, maybe the three-pointer, the defense has a great contest. He's able to then call for a screen, or the big man naturally comes up for a screen and he gets into a little pull-up midi. And that's what Mikal did. That was his game, was not running pick and rolls. He wasn't a ball handler. He was either, look at that, spot up numbers, 374 possessions, shot 37% from those. So you can see high pick and roll, 46%. From the right and the left pick and roll, 63 and 55% respectively. On ISOs, only 10 possessions of isolations per game for the entire season per Synergy. 10 possessions of let me go cook, right? So he was a role player. And you know what he did in this year? This year that he was casted into a role player, guess what he did? Mikal Bridges finished second in Defensive Player of the Year voting behind Marcus Smart, and also was a first-team All-Defensive Player, right? Keep in mind the usage and the frequency of all these numbers, okay? Now, let's flip the page over to this season that just finished, where a lot of people gave this kid a lot of grief, right? Without context, just watching the games or just stat watching, you can criticize a player's efficiency and say, oh, they suck. But if you dig deep into the data and you watch film, it tells a different story. 23-24 nets, Mikal Bridges as the number one option on a team. Not a great team, but the number one option nonetheless. Check out the pick and roll ball handler. 375 possessions in a pick and roll. He actually improved as a primary creator, look at the possessions in high pick and roll. 251. That's damn near a 200 possession difference. Shot 42% on field goal on those. Not great. Right pick and roll, left pick and roll, still the same. 34% went down a bit, 46 on the left. Spot ups, he kept his number of spot ups, so he was getting a lot more attempts to shoot. And then look at the isolations from 10 to 119 is nuts. And 35% on those. You notice the lowest percentages, his efficiency tanked in pretty much every metric, but the possessions are like times 4, times 5. When you're looking at data and statistics, you have to kind of put a curve in for increased frequency. That's why when I look at people that use per 36, per 100, that is, to me, that's goofy stats, right? If anybody ever argues a player with me using per anything like 36, I'm just going to laugh at you, because you're not accounting for fatigue. You're not accounting for attrition, injury, how the defense is playing him. Also in this year, Mikal Bridges saw more traps out of the pick and rolls. The defense committed more to the pick and roll than he ever seen in his career. So this dude was getting the John Morant treatment. He was getting the LeBron treatment. He was getting the primary ball handler treatment for a guy that literally about a year and a half before this was playing Trevor Ariza. So when people judge him as a player, they're not judging him as a player in totality. They're just looking at stats, right? And the argument for him as far as his play on the court is really skewed by what he's being asked to do. If I am bringing in Mikal Bridges to be my number one creator, to be my John Morant, my Trae Young, my Luka, then I'm screwed. And I'm not going to give up many picks to do that. But if I'm bringing in Mikal to be a supplemental player that can run a right or left pick and roll when he gets a kick out from Alp, from Jalen, from a man, defense commits, able to set another screen, get into his pull-up, get to the rim, that's a different player. And that player shouldn't be having a 24% usage. You scale that down back to about under 20, then he can have, guess what, more energy on defense, right? We saw this with Anthony Edwards trying to guard Kyrie Irving in the conference finals. It is hard to be a primary creator and a two-way player, right? Something's got to suffer, right? That's why, as much as we see guys like Steph, Harden, these guys that carry such an offensive load, Luka, they can't just be on all the time defending like a two-way player like that. There's not a lot of guys built like that. Kawhi Leonard, he's a two-way player, but he can't create, right? You always have to give up something. You always have to give up something. The closest thing that I know of players that were able to do both were prime Kobe, prime LeBron, and prime Michael Jordan. And I don't see any of those guys in the league right now. So this is what I'm talking about when I talk about guys fitting their role. And I think Mikal was playing out of his role in Brooklyn, but lost within all that shuffle is that he actually improved. He actually got better as a basketball player. The isolation percentages went up. His shooting percentages went up in isolation. He's pretty much a 38% three-point shooter across his career. He averaged 24, 5 and 4 in the playoffs in the first round. This is a guy that went to the conference finals. I can see why the Rockets are in love with him. I can see it. Now, another thing that comes up with Mikal Bridges is going to be his contract. So looking at his contract, this coming season, theoretically, if the Rockets were to trade for him and he became a Rocket this summer, this year he'd be owed $23.3 million, which is Dylan Brooks's contract, right? For probably double, triple the value of that. You also get him another additional year after that of $24.9 million, where after in that year, that will be his expiring year, he becomes a unrestricted free agent at 30 years old in the 26-27 season. Now, I've heard people criticize this and say, well, I wouldn't give up the third pick or whatever for him because of the salary. To me, this salary I like it. I like it. I don't know about y'all. You're basically paying half on the dollar for an elite player, right? And with the cap spike that's going to go up, him making 23 and 24 million, 2 years playing for the Rockets is worth probably 3 or 4 years of a player that's slightly better that's making more, right? So you're getting great value for it. Another reason I like it, it aligns with our team, right? So let's assume we magically, somehow, some way, are able to keep Şengün and Jalen Green on the team, while we traded for Mikal Bridges, which is what I hope happens, right? You got Şengün and Jalen, and you're able to even max them, give them their rookie max, which is 25% of your salary. Assuming we're praying these kids turn into something, a dynamic duo, right? While in their first 2 years of him being in Houston, they're going to be under contract. The people that come up when he is done playing in Houston is going to be Jabari and Tari Eason. Now, I don't see Jabari getting a max. I don't see Tari Eason getting a max. And that's if they're here, right? I don't see either of them being max players. So the decision to pay Mikal in that unrestricted free agency year is going to be based largely on what does he play like? Because the market is going to decide, right? You could lose him for nothing if he's playing like a superstar and he wants to stay in Houston. You pay him like a superstar. If he's playing like a role player and he wants to stay in Houston, you pay him like a role player. If he doesn't want to stay in Houston, guess what? You can trade him, right? You can trade him. This is the thing about when you acquire players that are always positive impact. A 3-and-D wing that is 6'8", 6'9", with or 6'8", however tall he is, and a 7'2" wingspan that can shoot, they're always going to have value. He's always going to have value barring injury. So to me, the contract is nothing to me. And even if you did want to pay him, let's say you did want to pay him and he wants a lot of money, more money than the market you would have to pay to keep him. Guess who's off the books in the year that he's going to be extension eligible? Fred VanVleet's contract is off the books, and Dillon Brooks is going to be in his final year. So if somehow Dillon is still here with Mikal Bridges and Fred is gone, trade out Dillon, and you can free up $60 million, right? You free up, just by doing that, you free up $60 million in salary to add him. And guess what? Even if he gets maybe a 30% or close to that of the max, you can still sneak in another big salary into that team of Jalen, Şengün, some role player guys. You still have Amen Thompson on his last year of his rookie contract, Cam, last year of his rookie contract. This is assuming they're all here. And you can sneak in another player using about 30 to 35% of your cap, depending on what you sign Mikal for. So to me, this is a no-brainer. Now, what is going to change about what I do in this situation with Bridges is definitely going to be the cost, right? The cost. Now, here's where net fans bump their heads. I've seen people, the craziest one I've seen is Şengün, Tari, I think basically all of our picks, right? All the picks that they have and the third pick to get Mikal Bridges. That is stupid. That is some dope fiend. I took a hit of crack, got on Twitter, typed out a trade idea and hit send. That is not the deal, right? To me, the way I look at it, Mikal Bridges, roughly based on his role as one of the premier 3-and-D wings, is probably worth 2 unrestricted first round picks outright, right? 2 unrestricted first round picks outright, which is about market value for a player like him. Or if you can go up to 3 or 4 heavily protected picks for him, that to me, that's his value, right? So if we're going to throw in a player, you're just getting that player and possibly a future pick, right? Because I'm not going to give you the 3rd overall pick in this draft and a player that's a young prospect like Alp or Jalen or Amen Thompson, any of those guys like that. I'm not opposed to moving players, but if we move a player, the picks you're going to get are going to be protected, because those players, especially the ones that are going to be the blue chippers, the Şengüns, the men's of the world, to a lesser extent, Jalen Green, that's worth any better than any pick in this draft that we have right now. Hell, to me, damn near all 6 of our prospects, Jabari would go first overall in this draft if he was in it. So I'm looking at one of our players as a premium first round pick. I'm looking at Amen and Şengün and Jalen as 2 first round picks. So if you're going to say that you want Mikal to come to Houston, I can give you a player, salary filler if you need it, and maybe a future protected first. That's pretty much what the conversation is gonna start and end for me. If you don't want, if we want to keep the core 6 together and just maybe send out Dillon Brooks and get Mikal Bridges to come back, then if you just want picks, then you can get the 3rd pick and some, maybe even next year swap and maybe some protections on the future ones. But once again, I think it's a no-brainer. I'm glad they're engaging in this. And a lot of people think this is not a win-now move. A win-now move would be trying to sign a Luka Doncic, right? Trying to sign a Jaylen Brown. That's a win-now move. This is a progression move. This is moving forward. One thing in this league, you never stay static, right? The league is constantly evolving. I said this in my last video. The NBA is not waiting on the Rockets' young core to figure it out. They're not going to wait for us to know who's the NBA is improving. Wemby is improving. Luka is improving. John Moran is improving. Zion is improving. SGA is improving. The league is constantly in movement and going forward. And if you stay static, you're going to get left behind. So I understand this as somebody that, knows that Stone is from the school of the Daryl Morey. He's going to keep moving forward. This is how you find players, right? Whether they have value. You get a player, he comes in, bring him in, see whether he can overperform what you got him from. You flip him for another player, flip him, bang. You land on a James Harden. You land on your next star. You land on your next Iguodala that is that key championship piece to a young core. So this is the way the NBA has to go. And so it's not a win now move. I still think that he is just a player that is perfectly suited for this team because to me, he's a Dillon Brooks upgrade. He's a Dillon Brooks upgrade. He doesn't infringe on Jalen Green. He doesn't infringe on Alperen Sengun. Does not infringe on Jabari. The only person that would probably take an L in this, as far as possibly becoming a starter in the future, is going to be Dillon Brooks. I mean, it's going to be not Dillon Brooks. It's going to be Tari Eason. It's going to be Tari Eason, right? And I'm not going to make a franchise decision based off of that, especially for a player that is a potential defensive player of the year and a first-team all-defensive level defender. And a guy that could average 24 in the playoffs, right? A guy that could run damn near 300 pick and rolls in a season. But I'm not going to ask him to run pick and rolls. I'm going to ask him to be a secondary creator off of my two-man game between Sengun and Jalen Green. I like that. I don't know about y'all. Another thing that Kevin O'Connor had said was the discussions with the Memphis Grizzlies about possibly trading back to 9. I mean, Memphis's roster is pretty thin. I'm not going to lie. I don't really see anything that I would like from there. In fact, I'm going to pull that up right now just to look at their roster. Let's see what they got over there in Memphis. Obviously, John Moran is not the player that they're going to trade for 3. Jaren Jackson Jr., I don't think they're going to trade Jaren Jackson Jr. Marcus Smart is interesting. Obviously, the Ime connection is there. He has a pretty good contract, similar to Mikal Bridges. They make about the same damn near money, $20 million next year and $20 million the year after that. A guy that you can let walk out. Luke Kennard is on a team option, so he's technically an expiring contract. So he's, I don't think that's the guy that they're going to go for because his contract situation is so kind of hit or miss. So you wouldn't trade a 3rd pick. I know we love Luke Kennard, but I wouldn't trade back just for him unless he came with a package of stuff. Brendan Clark is interesting to me because I like Brendan Clark. If you guys have been, watching the NBA, many of our games versus the Memphis Grizzlies, this dude really, he eats, right? He goes off on the Rockets. He is one of those random players from another team that tends to turn into their prime version against us. Never misses from the field, hits all his threes. But he is on a very, very team-friendly contract, $12 million, which in a few years is going to be a vet minimum, right? He's going to be locked down till 27, 28, which is when Amen Thompson is due. So he's basically getting paid the same as Jalen Green. I would try to get my hands on Brendan Clark because I think that he is a player that could help us as far as playing that 4 position, not an elite shot blocker, but dynamic enough to give you a different look. A decent defender, can switch out a little bit, can shoot a little bit. I like his mid-range game, his floater shot puts. He has a nice arsenal and a pretty good offensive rebounder. So that's a name that I would be looking at if we are talking to Memphis. Desmond Bane, I like Desmond Bane. I just don't see a world where the Rockets can pry him out of Memphis and just for moving up. And the rest of their roster is pretty, it's pretty trash, right? So to me, the only real players that we could probably get from them are going to be Marcus Smart and Brendan Clark, and maybe a combination of the two to move up to 3. If they could land both of those players, that would address 2 key areas. Backup point guard. I know we want Amen Thompson. He is going to be the backup point guard, but we also need another adult in the room to help organize. I don't mind having 3 or 4 guys that are interchangeable. Remember, Marcus Smart in Boston played the 1, 2, and the 3 for them in certain lineups when Ime has a fetish. If you guys don't know, Ime has a fetish for small guard lineups. So I wouldn't be shocked if he actually went after Marcus Smart and you would see a lineup with like Jalen, Marcus Smart, Fred VanVleet, and Amen Thompson, and like whoever else out there. Ime is weird like that. So yeah, I can only see Marcus Smart and Brandon Clark as the only two players, and I would need both of them to move up and maybe some future picks. I'm not sure. It just depends. I don't know how bad Memphis likes whoever they're going to pick at 3 if they were able to move up. I've heard Donovan Clingan. There's a lot of buzz about, different teams picking different players are number 1. Personally, I think it's all cap at this point. We remember what happened with Jabari and the Paolo Banchero draft. It's all cap, right? So, what the old saying, believe half of what you heard, or none of what they tell you, whatever that phrase is, half of what you heard and none of what you see, or half of what you see, none of what you heard. It's a lot of cap going on at this time, but I do believe the Rockets are actively engaged in trading that pick because it just makes sense. It just makes sense. And you guys can go watch my previous videos about why I think so. But just to summarize, I like the Mikal Bridges talks. I think there's a price point that we have to hit before we actually pull that deal. I wouldn't do it just for anything. I think that you have to stick to your guns about that because at the end of the day, there's always going to be another opportunity to make a deal in the future, even if you draft a player. But I think Mikal Bridges makes this team a serious contender for a playoff spot like right now, day one, without actually infringing on the plan to go forward. So I want you guys to let me know, right? I'm curious to see, one, would you trade for Mikal Bridges? Just start there. And if you did trade for him, what would you give up? Let me know in the comments and in the chat. Appreciate you guys for rocking with me in this video. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button. Keep rocking with the Chop Shop. We're going to keep dropping that fire.
DJ Candlestick. It's the Chop Not Slap Show.